If you've ever sat quietly at a family dinner, feeling like an outsider in your own home, then you already know a little bit about what I've lived through. Maybe you've felt that sting when your own blood treats you like a stranger, or when your efforts are invisible no matter how hard you try. If you've ever wondered, why am I always the one left out? I want you to know you're not alone. My name's Rabeeca, and this is the story of how my family's secrets, betrayals, and one DNA test changed everything. Before I share what really happened, tell me where you're listening from so I know I'm not the only one who's ever felt this way. Because sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones you need protection from the most. And sometimes the only way to survive is to fight back. I wish I could say my childhood was full of warmth and laughter, but the truth is, I always felt like a guest in my own family. My father, the man I called Dad, was strict, distant, and impossible to please. My mother tried to keep the peace, but she was always anxious, always tiptoeing around his moods. And then there was my younger brother, the golden child who could do no wrong. I was the responsible one, the fixer, the one who made sure everyone else was okay, even when I wasn't. It's strange how you can sense you don't belong even before anyone says it out loud. I remember being 7 years old, watching my dad ruffle my brother's hair and laugh at his silly jokes, while I sat quietly at the table, hoping for a smile that never came. I learned early to keep my head down, to work hard, to never ask for too much. I thought if I was perfect, maybe he'd love me the way he loved my brother. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. As I got older, the distance between us only grew. My dad would praise my brother for the smallest achievements, while my own successes were met with silence, or worse, criticism. "Why can't you be more like him?" he'd say, not realizing how much those words cut. My mother would try to comfort me, but her words always felt empty. "He's just under a lot of stress," she'd whisper. "He loves you in his own way." But I knew better. Love doesn't feel like this. The real turning point came on my 16th birthday. I'd worked for weeks on a school project, hoping to impress my dad. I got the highest grade in my class, and for a moment, I let myself believe he'd be proud. But when I showed him the certificate, he barely glanced at it. "That's nice," he said, his voice flat. "But your brother just made the soccer team. Now that's something to celebrate." I felt invisible, like I was fading out of my own life. But nothing prepared me for what happened a few months later. It was a Sunday afternoon, and the house was unusually quiet. My dad was in the living room watching TV, while my mom was in the kitchen. I was passing by when I heard them arguing in low voices. I paused, curiosity getting the better of me. "She's not even mine," my dad hissed, his words sharp and cold. "Why should I care what happens to her?" My heart stopped. For a second, I thought I'd misheard, but then my mom's voice, trembling and desperate. "Please don't say that. She's your daughter. She needs you." I stood frozen in the hallway, my world tilting on its axis. I wanted to run in and demand answers, but I couldn't move. I felt like I was drowning, the air thick and heavy around me. I waited until the argument ended, then slipped back to my room, my mind racing. Was it true? Was I really not his child? Suddenly, every cold glance, every harsh word, every moment of being left out made a cruel kind of sense. That night, I lay awake replaying the conversation over and over. I wanted to ask my mom, but I was terrified of the answer. What if she confirmed it? What if everything I'd believed about my family was a lie? I tried to convince myself it was just a fight, that my dad didn't mean it, but deep down, I knew the truth. I'd always known. The days that followed were a blur. I avoided my dad, barely spoke to my mom, and threw myself into schoolwork. But the question gnawed at me, growing louder with every passing day. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. The way my dad introduced me to his friends as Rabeeca, never my daughter. The way family photos seemed to tell a story I wasn't part of. The way my brother and I looked nothing alike. His light hair and blue eyes, a stark contrast to my dark curls and olive skin. One night, unable to take it anymore, I searched online for answers. That's when I stumbled across a video about DNA tests. People were finding out the truth about their families, uncovering secrets that had been hidden for years. I watched, fascinated and terrified. What if I took a test and found out my dad was right? What if I really didn't belong? I ordered a DNA kit in secret, using money I'd saved from tutoring. When it arrived, I hid it in my closet, waiting for the right moment. My hands shook as I followed the instructions, swabbing the inside of my cheek and sealing the sample in the little tube. I mailed it off the next day, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. The waiting was torture. Every time the mail arrived, I felt a jolt of panic. What if the results confirmed my worst fears? What if they proved I was nothing more than an outsider in my own home? I tried to act normal, but my mom noticed the change. She asked if I was okay, and I lied, telling her I was just stressed about exams. My brother didn't notice at all. My dad seemed even more distant, if that was possible. Finally, the email arrived. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. The words blurred, but the meaning was clear. My dad wasn't my biological father. The test didn't just hint at it, it spelled it out in cold, clinical language. I sat there, numb, the world spinning around me. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just felt empty. After that day, everything changed. I locked myself in my room, reading the DNA test report over and over, wondering what I was supposed to do now. Every word, every number, every percentage reminded me that I didn't really belong in this house. I kept asking myself, am I still my mother's daughter? Am I still my brother's sister? Or am I just a mistake, a secret everyone tried to hide for years? I remembered being a little girl, sitting on the rooftop with my mom at night watching the stars. She used to say, "Rabeeca, you are my greatest joy." Back then, I believed I truly belonged to someone. But now, with the truth staring me in the face, I felt like nothing more than a burden, a problem everyone had tried to keep hidden. I tried to talk to my mom. She was in the kitchen, rolling out dough, but there was a tiredness in her eyes I hadn't noticed before. I stood quietly beside her. "Mom, are you hiding something from me?" I asked softly. She stopped what she was doing, set the rolling pin down, and looked at me. There were tears in her eyes, but she tried to smile. "Rabeeca, some things are very hard to say." Her voice was full of pain, and I knew in that moment that she understood everything. I fell silent, but inside I was burning. I needed the truth. "Mom, please, tell me. Am I your daughter? Do I really belong in this family?" She pulled me close and for the first time told me the truth I'd been so afraid to hear. "Rabeeca, you are my daughter, but your father, he never truly accepted you. He always had doubts, always kept his distance. Every day I prayed he would open his heart to you, but he never did." Hearing her words, I started to cry. "Then why did you keep me in this life for so long?" I asked. She just said, "Because I wanted to protect you. I never wanted you to feel alone. But maybe I was wrong." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept wondering, am I still part of this family? Should I stay here, or should I start my own life without anyone's love or reassurance? The next day at school, everything felt strange. My friends were laughing, the teachers were busy teaching, but I felt like I was living someone else's life. I kept asking myself, am I really someone's daughter? Is there a place for me in this world? When I got home, my dad was sitting in the living room, watching TV. For the first time, I stood in front of him without fear. "Dad, I need to talk to you." He put the remote down, but there was no warmth in his eyes. "I know everything. The DNA test told me the truth. You're not my real father." I said those words with a strength I didn't know I had. He looked at me, then turned his eyes back to the TV. "So now you know. What do you want?" His voice was cold, as if this was just another difficult day for him. I said, "I just want to know why you kept me here all these years if you never accepted me." He took a deep breath and said, "Because of your mother. She wanted you here. I could never see you as my own, but I never wanted to hurt you either." Hearing that, I felt both anger and sadness. Was I just a responsibility to him? Just a duty he had to fulfill? That day, I realized that no matter how hard I tried, I would never truly belong to him. That night, I sat in my room, holding the DNA report, wondering what I should do next. I was angry at my mom, angry at my dad, but most of all, I was angry at myself. Why had I spent so many years craving their love? Why did I tie my happiness to their approval? But then a new thought came to me. If I wasn't really his daughter, then I could live my life on my own terms. I didn't need anyone's love or approval. I could create my own identity. In that moment, I decided I would start living for myself. I wouldn't wait for anyone's acceptance anymore. I would write my own story, no matter how painful it was. The days that followed were some of the loneliest of my life, but also the most honest. For the first time, I stopped pretending. I stopped trying to win my father's approval or make my brother notice me. I moved through the house like a ghost, but I was no longer afraid to be invisible. In fact, I started to realize that being invisible to people who never truly saw me was a kind of freedom. My mother tried to reach out, but I kept my distance. I needed space to breathe, to think, to feel the pain and let it move through me. I spent hours in my room journaling everything, my anger, my sadness, my confusion, and slowly, my determination. I wrote about the little girl who used to wait for her father to say, "I'm proud of you," and how that girl was finally learning she didn't need his words to know her own worth. One evening, my mother knocked on my door. She came in quietly, sitting on the edge of my bed. "Rabeeca, I know you're hurting. I know I should have told you the truth a long time ago. I was scared. I thought I was protecting you, but I see now that I was only protecting myself." Her voice trembled, and for the first time I saw her not just as my mother, but as a woman who had made mistakes and was trying to make things right. I looked at her, my heart heavy, but open. "I just needed you to be honest with me. I needed to know I wasn't crazy for feeling different all these years." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "You were never crazy. You were always the bravest one in this family." We sat together in silence, and for the first time, I felt a small piece of the wall crumble between us. I didn't forgive her completely, not yet, but I could see a path forward, a path where I could heal, even if it took time. But my father was a different story. He avoided me even more now, barely speaking, barely looking at me. I realized he was ashamed, not just of me, but of himself. He had built his life on a lie. And now that the truth was out, he didn't know how to face it. I stopped expecting anything from him. I stopped hoping he would change. Instead, I started focusing on myself. I threw myself into my studies, determined to build a future that was mine alone. I applied for scholarships, joined clubs, and started volunteering at a local shelter. For the first time, I was doing things because I wanted to, not because I was trying to prove something to anyone else. My brother, meanwhile, seemed completely unaffected. He was still the center of my father's world, still the golden child. But I noticed something new. He started to look at me differently, almost with curiosity. One night, he knocked on my door, something he hadn't done in years. "Hey," he said awkwardly, standing in the doorway. "Are you okay?" I shrugged. "I will be." He hesitated, then sat down across from me. "I heard Mom and Dad fighting. I know something's going on. You don't have to tell me, but I just wanted you to know I'm here if you need anything." It wasn't much, but it was more than I expected. For a moment, I saw the brother I used to play with as a child before everything got so complicated. I nodded, grateful for the small gesture. As the weeks passed, I started to feel stronger. The pain was still there, but it was no longer the only thing I felt. I started to see possibilities, new dreams, new paths, new ways of being. I realized that my family's rejection didn't define me. Their secrets didn't have to be my burden anymore. One afternoon, while cleaning out an old box in my closet, I found a letter addressed to me in my mother's handwriting. It was dated years ago, but she had never given it to me. My hands shook as I opened it. Dear Rabeeca, I'm writing this because I don't know if I'll ever have the courage to say it out loud. You are my daughter in every way that matters. I know your father has always been distant, and I know you feel it. I wish I could change that. I wish I could give you the love you deserve. I hope one day you'll understand that my silence was never about you. It was about my own fear. I love you. Always. Mom. I cried as I read those words, not just for the pain, but for the love that was there, hidden under all the fear and mistakes. I realized that my mother had been trapped too, trapped by her own choices, her own regrets. Maybe we could both find a way out, together. That night, I made a decision. I would not let my father's rejection or my family's secrets control my life any longer. I would take back my power, even if it meant starting over. I would build a life that was honest, brave, and entirely my own. I started by having an honest conversation with my mother. I told her I needed boundaries, that I needed space to heal, but that I was willing to try to rebuild our relationship on my terms. She agreed, promising to support me, to be honest, and to never hide the truth from me again. With my father, I simply let go. I stopped chasing his approval, stopped waiting for him to see me. I realized that sometimes the best revenge is living well, proving to yourself that you are enough, even when others can't see it. I began to dream about the future, not the one my family had planned for me, but the one I would create for myself. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but for the first time, I was excited to find out. Spring arrived with a quiet promise of new beginnings. I found myself drawn to the world outside my window, to the gentle green of new leaves and the sunlight that warmed my face. I started taking long walks alone, letting the fresh air clear my mind. Each step felt like a small act of rebellion, a way of claiming space in a world that had always felt too small for me. At home, things were different. My mother and I spoke more honestly, sometimes quietly, sometimes through tears. She apologized again and again, not just for the secret, but for all the years she let me feel alone. I could see she was trying, and I let her. Healing wasn't instant, but it was real. We started cooking together, sharing stories, laughing at old memories. Sometimes we'd sit on the rooftop at night, just like we used to, and she'd hold my hand as if she was afraid to let go again. My father, on the other hand, became a shadow in the house. He avoided me, and I avoided him. I realized I didn't need his words or his approval anymore. I was done shrinking myself to fit into his idea of family. I was done letting his silence define my worth. The more I let go, the lighter I felt. School became my sanctuary. I poured myself into my studies, determined to earn a scholarship and build a future that was truly mine. I joined the debate team, started volunteering at a women's shelter, and even made a few new friends who saw me for who I was, not who my family wanted me to be. For the first time, I felt proud of myself, not for anyone else, but for me. One day, my brother surprised me. He came into my room, awkward and quiet, and handed me a small notebook. He said, "I found this in the attic. It's yours, right?" It was my old diary, filled with childhood dreams and secret wishes. I smiled, touched that he'd thought to return it. "Thanks," I said softly. He hesitated, then added, "I know things are weird, but you're still my sister. That hasn't changed." It was a small olive branch, but it meant the world to me. As graduation approached, I received news that I'd been awarded a full scholarship to a university in another city. I was overjoyed and terrified. Leaving home meant leaving behind everything I'd ever known, but it also meant freedom. It meant a chance to start over, to build a life on my own terms. The night before I left, my mother sat with me on the rooftop, the city lights twinkling below. She handed me a small box. Inside was a necklace, a delicate silver chain with a tiny star pendant. She said, "For clarity," echoing the words she'd used when I was a child, "so you always remember who you are, no matter where you go." I hugged her tightly, tears streaming down my face. "Thank you, Mom, for everything, even my hard parts." She smiled, brushing my hair back. "You're stronger than you know, Rabeeca. I'm proud of you. I always have been." The next morning, I packed my bags and said goodbye to the house that had been both my prison and my shelter. My father didn't come to see me off, but I didn't expect him to. My mother and brother hugged me tightly, promising to visit soon. As I boarded the bus, I felt a strange mix of sadness and hope. I was leaving behind the girl who had spent her life searching for approval and stepping into the woman who was ready to write her own story. University was everything I had hoped for and more. I met people from all walks of life, each with their own stories of pain and resilience. I found friends who became family, mentors who believed in me, and opportunities I'd never dreamed of. I studied hard, worked part-time jobs, and slowly, piece by piece, built a life that was truly mine. But I never forgot where I came from. I called my mother every week, sharing my triumphs and struggles. Our relationship grew stronger with distance, built on honesty and mutual respect. My brother visited during holidays and we laughed about old times, both of us a little older, a little wiser. Sometimes, late at night, I'd sit by my window and look up at the stars, the necklace my mother gave me resting against my skin. I'd whisper to myself, "You made it. You survived. And you are enough." I realized that revenge isn't always about hurting those who hurt you. Sometimes the best revenge is living well, finding happiness, and refusing to let anyone else define your worth. My family's secrets and betrayals had shaped me, but they didn't break me. They made me stronger, braver, and more determined to create a life filled with love and truth. If you're listening to my story, and you've ever felt like an outsider in your own family, I want you to know you're not alone. You are not defined by anyone's rejection or by the secrets they keep. You have the power to choose your own path, to build your own happiness, and to become the person you were always meant to be. Thank you for listening to my journey. If my story touched your heart, please share your thoughts in the comments and let me know where you're listening from. And if you want to hear more stories of strength and survival, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means more to me than you'll ever know. This is Rabeeca signing off, not as someone's secret, but as someone who finally found her own light.